This is the easiest and healthiest way to make yogurt. And you literally only need 2 ingredients. But there's actually 3 different ways to make it. And in this video, I'm gonna run a few tests to see which method tastes the best. And most importantly, if any of them taste better than grocery store yogurt does. Now you actually don't need a yogurt maker to make homemade yogurt. You can use an Instant Pot, a crock pot, or other tools. But there's a reason this is my favorite way. This product is super simple because it's only a couple of pieces. You've got the lid on the top, and then you've got the 8 jars that it actually comes with, and the jars have their own lids as well, so they seal shut. They tell you the measurements on the jars, and they basically just sit inside of this yogurt maker once you fill them up with the proper ingredients. You put the lid on, you hit the power button, and that's it. That's all you have to do. Now, the most difficult part of this process by far is actually boiling milk and letting it cool back down. I found out that when you're boiling it, it tends to boil over in the pot. You get it spilled all over. It's hard to pour from the pot. You got all those things. And of course, you have to wait for it to boil and cool back down to room temperature. So for test number 1, we're gonna see if that actually matters or if it's just an useless step they want you to do. For jars 1 and 2, I'm gonna use milk that I did not boil first, which is against what the directions are telling me to do. Now, once again, the 2 ingredients for making this are milk, which you're gonna want probably whole milk for this, I've heard is best, and then some sort of yogurt. You do need the yogurt to have those live active yogurt cultures, which you'll see in the ingredients. Most grocery store yogurt is going to have this, so I just have Phages 5% yogurt. And after that, it's just 95% milk to 5% yogurt. Depending on how many jars you're making, you'll have to do a little bit of math or read the instructions on this, but I'm going in first with 0.6 ounces of yogurt, and that will go right into a bowl here. And then for the milk, I'm going with 11.5 ounces of milk for these 2 jars. So let's get that all poured into a measuring cup. And then we take a little bit of that milk and actually mix it in with the yogurt here. You're just gonna wanna pour just a small amount so that you can start incorporating it. So just mix this all up until it kind of becomes one consistency with the yogurt and the milk here. The rest of the milk goes into its own bowl, so get that poured into here. And then after that, we just mix the 2 bowls together. So the little mixture that we created, we're gonna slowly whisk it in to the other mixture so that it just gets nice in there, stirring while I'm going. Should just take about 30 seconds or so max. And now we just have to fill up our jars. For this one, we made the first 2 jars with our non-boiled milk. So I'm gonna use a ladle to help out here. It's hard to not spill this, but let's get these 2 jars filled up. So there's our 2 jars, mostly filled to the top. I probably miscalculated a little bit of liquid, or some got stuck in the bowls or something. Let's get the lids on these for test number 1 and 2 and into our yogurt maker. And now for the remaining 6 jars, I've already boiled the milk right here. You can see we have boiled and cooled milk. It's actually about room temperature to the touch, maybe a little bit warmer than that. And from here, the steps are exactly the same as the last one. So this time I have 1.8 ounces of yogurt. Again, you gotta do a little bit of math. A little bit of milk into there once again to mix it up. And then back into our larger pot of milk, just like the last time, exactly the same steps. And let's get our remaining 6 jars filled with the boiled milk. We've got all these with their lids on with the milks inside of them. Let's get them all into the yogurt maker now. Our top lid goes back on, and it's time to cook. Now, it's recommended to cook for anywhere from 8 to 12 hours. So I wanna try both ends of that and see which one actually comes out better. I'm gonna leave jars 3 and 4 in for 12 hours, and the other ones I'm gonna take out after 8 hours. And let's find out if it actually makes a difference. We're all plugged in, one push of the power button. You'll see the light went blue onto there. We're all set. We'll check on this in 8 and 12 hours. It's now 8 hours later. For some reason, you're still not subscribed, but let's check in on the yogurt. I'm gonna grab one of our yogurts from the hot milk and one from the cold milk. So our number 1 is gonna be the cold milk originally, and number 3 is the hot milk. And let's just check how they are after 8 hours so far. Starting with yogurt number 1, which is the milk we did not boil. Let's take the lid off, and you can see it looks super liquidy on the top. I mean, there's a ton of water right there. It's almost not even a yogurt. It's just a pure liquid right there. We do still have to get it in the fridge overnight, but for now, let's check on the hot milk one and see if it made any sort of difference. And I mean, immediately you can tell it's way thicker. We still have a little bit of liquid there on the top of this one here, but I can see a lot more of actual yogurt here versus just kind of what looks like a soup with the other one. But we got to continue the experiment and see how they are after the fridge. So these two are going in the fridge. I'll catch you guys in 4 more hours for the 12-hour check-in. We're now 12 hours later. Let's check on our second batch of yogurts. I'm just gonna grab 2 of them once again, and number 2, of course, was our cold milk. Number 4, our boiled milk. So let's check on them after 12 hours. Opening them both up here. Once again, the initial look is number 2 looks way more liquidy. There's a ton of moisture inside of there, and grabbing it, I mean, it's basically just a pudding at this point. I don't even think that could be considered yogurt. Comparing once again to our boiled mixture is a solid yogurt texture. What I will say is so far, I can't really see a difference in any of the yogurts between the 8 and 12-hour ones. However, let's get them into the fridge overnight and we'll see how they taste, because really, that's the only important part. It's now the next day, so let's take a look at all the jars and find out which one tastes the best. Starting with the 2 that we put in for 8 hours, which is our number 1. Again, number 1 was cold milk, 8 hours, and number 3 was warm milk, 8 hours. I'm gonna start with these 2 and take a look at what they look like. So our cold milk for 8 hours, honestly, this has solidified a lot in the fridge, but it's still a little bit of like a crumbly sort of texture. Let's taste test the first one. So the texture is a little bit weird, but honestly the flavor is fine. It tastes pretty good. And now our boiled milk that was in there for 8 hours, this is a much more solidified texture, as you can see. The other one's pretty liquidy. This actually looks like a yogurt, but how does it taste? Honestly, the 2 of these are really similar in flavor. The texture of this throws me off a little bit. The cold milk versus the boiled milk has a way better yogurt, crumbly sort of texture. It has a slightly better flavor, but I wouldn't say it's significant, but overall it's the winner so far. The next one is our cold milk that was in there for 12 hours, which is jar number 2. Let's see if that made any sort of difference. And I mean, immediately I can see the texture difference in this one. This actually looks even more like a yogurt than any of the other 2. It's a full yogurt texture. And the taste of this one? So comparing the flavor of number 2, which is our cold milk that we cooked for 12 hours, versus number 3, which is our boiled milk that we cooked for 8 hours, I would say the flavor of number 3 is a little bit better. Again, it's almost incomparable, but I'll give the slight edge in flavor to number 3. The texture of number 2 is actually better. This one's pretty crumbly from just cooking for 8 hours, and it seems like the 12 hours has solidified the texture a little bit more, but now I'm excited for our final one, test number 4, which is going to be our boiled milk with the 12 hours. So let's take a good look at this one. And that's definitely the thickest texture that we have so far. It almost doesn't even fall off the spoon. I mean, it actually, I can go fully upside down like Dairy Queen. So let's test out number 4, our boiled milk that we cooked for 12 hours. So honestly, the flavor of this one is very similar to number 2 also. Again, number 2, our cold milk, number 4, our boiled milk, both these for 12 hours. We have a pretty similar flavor. I'd say the texture of 4 is a little bit creamier than number 2. This one's a little bit more liquidy, watery, if you will. Overall, the ones where I used boiled milk definitely have a slightly better flavor, but honestly, I'm gonna say it's not worth boiling your milk as long as you're okay with a little bit of a runnier texture at the end. But most importantly, do any of them taste better than just the original grocery store yogurt that we started with? Let's try out this plain Greek yogurt, which I don't think I'm a fan of, but let's do the test. So the texture of this one really threw me off. It's like a very thick, creamy texture versus more of like your creamy, slightly runny yogurt texture. And that's kind of why I had that disgusted face on my look when I first put it in, because it was rough in comparison. I would say the flavor is about even in the 2 of them. This flavor-wise tastes very similar to this, but I do like the texture of the one I made a little bit more. So is the yogurt maker worth the hassle of the process? My vote is to skip boiling the milk, just mix the ingredients together, and you're gonna make a ton of yogurt way cheaper than you would at the grocery store. This entire container is like $2.50 at the grocery store. And for about $3, I made 10 times as much yogurt as this. So it's way cheaper if you eat a ton of yogurt. There's one more gadget I use all the time, and it also only requires 3 ingredients to make the perfect homemade lunch. It's this pasta maker. Go check out my review.